All right. So, hello everybody. We just want to start off with some introductions here first before we get into everything. And again, we're here to discuss the art of leadership and what that may entail and how that looks, right? So, my name is Julian Smith. I am the program director here at CFES and as well as the alumni coordinator. And I'll definitely be the host for tonight, guiding and moderating our questions. I'll swing it over to Amanda.
Thank you so much, Julian. My name is Amanda Ryan. I am the president of G3 Life Sciences. We're a part of G3 Translate, and I'm based just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So my organization provides accessible language services and technologies to pharmaceutical and healthcare industries, where we really try to play our part in developing life-saving treatments and getting access to healthcare all over the world. I've been in the translation industry for just under 15 years. A lot of years when I think about it. Until last summer, I was actually working with TransPerfect, which is the world's largest translation organization. I started there straight out of college, 22 years old, a University of Georgia Bulldog graduate. And I really built up my leadership career within TransPerfect until I was most recently the vice president of production, until last summer came around when I had this opportunity to take on this leadership role within G3.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh, Naja.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Naja Shah. I'm the Senior Director of Learning and Development Strategy for 2U in our boot camp business. It's my role to make sure that we get the best instructional staff who are tech experts and train them up to be able to teach to impact students across the globe at many universities. So I have multiple teams that are leading towards a goal of creating a learning ecosystem. So that we can be a learning destination, not only for students, but also our instructional staff. I've spent the majority of my career in education. I started with Teach for America, and I taught in Dallas, helped found a school in Brooklyn, learned a lot during that time, recognized I wanted to make a broader impact. So went to work for Teach for America New York, and now I'm at an ed tech company looking at all the different sides of education.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much to both of you guys. Thank you. That's absolutely amazing. So again, we will be discussing the art of leadership. Many people have an idea of what leadership may entail, just a basic concept of what a leader is, right? But today we're kind of going to focus, dive a little deeper on what that may be. So of course, I have a list of questions here, and we're going to jump right into this right now, all right? So first question up, feel free, if anyone wants to just jump in, take a stab at the first question, that'll be great. But the first question, just to open us up, is how do you define being a leader?
I can take it.
Right.
We're just going to ping back and forth.
Sure. So I define leadership as a set of individual and collective choices to change a reality, right? And so like in its simplest form, it's like you're making choices on your own, you're making choices within a group that affect other people to change some type of reality. And to be able to do that, you have to be relational, like rooted in like inclusion and like mutual regard and trust and respect. You have to have a clear vision for what that change is that you want. But you also got to be strategic, right? How is everything interconnected to make sure that you can change that reality that you want? And you always have to be a learner. I think that at the basis is understanding that we don't know everything. The more that I learn and the more that I grow as a leader is the more that I recognize I just need to fail fast.
Great. Thank you for that, Naja.
It's really hard to add anything to that because that was absolutely spot on. Naja mentioned having a vision. I think that is really indicative of being a leader, is that you're seeing a vision, you're seeing the end result. You're not really looking at what are the next steps and what are the transactional points. It's about following that vision, and it's about motivating the people around you, the individuals, and not necessarily just people that you manage, but really the collective whole, the stakeholders, whoever's invested, to get to that point, to follow you to that point, and to really bring out the best in each of those people and figure out how to pull the best of each of them together in order to drive you towards that vision. So I think visionary vision, that's a huge point to really play out there.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more. I think like an overarching theme there is like shaping and molding, basically is what the idea of a leader is. So definitely thank you for that. That was absolutely amazing. We're gonna jump right into our next question here. Um, what are some skills you believe you possess, and what are some interesting ways? Sorry, what are some leadership skills? Um, I'm sorry. What are some leadership skills you believe you possess, and what are some interesting ways you develop some of these leadership skills? So let's start
I
with Meg.
can
Yeah.
I can jump in this one. Yeah. I truly believe that some of the most important leadership skills really boil down to being able to connect with people. So authenticity, your values, really kind of doing the right thing, and being the kind of person that, regardless of what it is that you're working on or how you're leading, that people believe in you and that they're connected to what you believe in, and they're with you on that. And I think that that's something that I think a lot of times in leadership, we feel like we need to hide that side of ourselves. I think that vulnerability, that piece where you're connecting with people, maybe you feel like you need to be strong and you need to kind of drive the way and always be in that position, but finding ways to connect with people. And that's something I've definitely learned over the years. I think it's a part of inherently bringing out my personality into my role as a leader and finding ways to connect with people. But people see through something that is not authentic. They see through a person who is trying to drive something that they don't fully stand behind, or a vision that they don't really follow. So leading with that authenticity and coming from a place of doing the right thing, I think has been really key in my leadership journey, and something that I've found drives better results and more direct engagement from people if you just kind of lean into it versus shy away from that side of yourself.
Wow. Thank you. Naja.
Yeah, Amanda, I would build on that. I think that like to be able to show up as your authentic self, you have to know yourself as a leader. And I think that my ability to like self-reflect and be real with myself, what my areas of strength and my areas of growth are. I'm a values-based leader, right? And so within 10 minutes, we haven't even been here in 10 minutes, everyone knows my core values: trust, growth, and equity. And so every decision that I make, I'm consistently thinking about it from those three lenses. It's whether like, can I trust myself to be authentic to me in this space? Do I have the opportunity to help others grow? Growth is probably my passion. Like when people say, what's your passion? I'm like, growth. I like to see it in every type of way. And then equity, do I have the opportunity to include voices that aren't included in this room, right? And can I use my position to do that? And so I think the most important thing, I think I've learned that because I've been socialized to believe certain things, right, in life. Like I think as a Black woman, I also often felt like I had to do this code switching thing. Growing up in Harlem and then going to boarding school in North Andover, Massachusetts, I was operating in these different contexts, and I had to figure out what was authentically me. How can I be myself in all of these spaces? And so I think from all of those lived experiences and reflecting on who am I and my social identities within multiple spaces, I was able to recognize, okay, your core values ground you. You have to be aware of these things, but know your strengths so you can leverage those in every single space that you're in.
Great. So quick question,
That's awesome.
Kind of sidebar here. So do you believe that someone that is uncertain of themselves can still have characteristics, or can they still be a leader if they don't have any core values, or if they are uncertain of who they are as a person? Can that person still lead?
I mean, I 100% think that they can. And I think that the ways that they do that is learning themselves in those moments, right? And I think that building that self-awareness of your strengths and weaknesses, actually, why don't I feel confident in this space, right? Why do I feel insecure when I'm around different levels of power, right? And so being able to step out of the situation and recognize, okay, what are my tendencies based off of what's happening around me, starts to help people build that confidence, right? I think that and what are the places where I feel the most confident and I am leading? Every person has a superpower. They have a place, whether that's like on the basketball court, or if they volunteer and they're the person who's making sure that everyone can check in. Like everyone has a place where they like can lead and use those strengths, but not everyone can articulate what they are, and that's okay. But start to reflect and step back and say, what are those spaces where I feel like I can truly be me? Because within that reflection, that's where your leadership lies.
Great. Naja, like basically she jumps right into our next question, right, Amanda? So it's like, Amanda, what advice would you give a young person who may feel like they possess no leadership qualities or characteristics? Naja hinted at a lot of different things there. But what advice would you give a young person?
You know, what's funny, I was reflecting on this, ironically, and the words that came to mind thinking about this before were self-reflection. And I think that self-reflection is one of the greatest tools that anybody has to learn that's out there. You know, to really take the time to think about, you know, as Naja said, where are you the most comfortable? Where do you feel the most at home? Where do you feel the most strong, the most confident? And identifying those areas that you don't feel that way. And I think that there's a lot to be said too about focusing in on what you're already good at and what you do well. And once you identifying it, really going with that and building off of that. It's not always about figure out what you're not great at and figure out how to be better at it. A lot of times it's about figure out what you are good at and what you are comfortable and be great at it. And be the greatest version of themselves that you can be. Because even as a leader, leaders are not going to be the best at everything. That's not the point of a leader. It's really about finding what that is. It's about surrounding yourself with people that can complement what you're great at and what your skill sets are, and that can bring something to the table and understand how to put those pieces together and motivate that collective towards whatever that end vision is. So that self-awareness and the self-reflection is really key, but don't focus too much on the parts of that you aren't as great at, and ignore the parts that you know are strong at, and really be able to lean into that and grow with that. And everything that Naja said before, just I'm sitting here just nodding my head. It's so true. And one thing I'd like to say is, I mean, I'm 36 years old, and I think the last 3 years of my life have been more telling for me in understanding my values and articulating my strengths and my confidence in that than the 33 years before that. So it is a constant journey. Learning is a journey, learning yourself is a journey, developing as yourself. You know, the values that I live by now weren't necessarily my values 10 years ago. And I appreciate that I've grown into a person that can live into that and recognize that. But that's also taken time and intentional reflection and really focusing on who I am and who I want to be. I didn't solve it when I was in my teens. I didn't solve it when I was in my 20s, for that matter. It's continuous.
Definitely. Thank you both so much for that. Definitely valuable information. So a lot of young people have a lot of different characteristics, right? Like different characteristics, different motives. They all different people, right? So with those different characteristics, do different leadership styles kind of affect your career path, right? So me being, let's say, if I'm abrasive kind of a person, does that affect what kind of leader I'll be? Does that affect what kind of job I'll have? So forth and so forth kind of thing. So Amanda, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's about understanding yourself and understanding your style and figuring out what complements that. So I think that it can affect your career path, but only if you make it that the case, and you really think about how can I take those aspects of myself and where can I apply them and in what way to make me successful. I think what's really interesting in my experience, particularly in more senior leadership roles, where I was in an organization where there were 5 or 6 of us in that VP level and 1,000 people within the world that we were responsible for. All of us were very different leaders. We had very different strengths, very different personalities. We had the loud ones in the room, obviously I was one of those. We had the ones that tend to be more quiet in the group, but everybody brought something to the table and they were there for a reason, and they really evolved their role to that place for a reason. So I don't think that it's a limitation in leadership style. I think it makes it an opportunity, and you figure out how your style can be brought to the table and what you're looking to do and where are you going to add your value in that, versus based on something I feel like I don't necessarily fit in or belong there.
I definitely agree with that 100%. Naja, do you believe different leadership styles affect your career path, or can it affect the career path of the young person in high school, college, that first year starting at that first job? Does that affect you at all?
So multiple things came up when I was reflecting on this question, because I think that there are archetypes of what leadership look like, right? And a lot of hiring managers can be biased into hiring certain types of leaders, right? And so like you being in a space and being able to be a leader that's different than the people around you, yes, it is like you're able to add a different value, a different perspective to the room. But actually being able to have that seat at the table, sometimes people are biased into how do I step into a space? How do you get a seat at the table, right? And so what's tough for me is that I am a leader that knows that I need people who think differently than me, but that is not the case in every industry. And we have to be aware of that as well. And so it can be limiting if in the interview process, you're not able to meet someone where they are and understand what is the culture of this company that I'm a part of. Every single time I apply to a company, I read the core values of that company, the vision and the mission of that company, because if it isn't in line, I'm going to have a version of cognitive dissonance where everybody else thinks or behaves in one way, right? It's the culture of that company. If it's not in line with my leadership, you're interviewing a company too. And so oftentimes it feels like the power is only one way of, this is the type of leader I need to be in this space. It's usually at that entry point, but once you enter, your leadership style can evolve.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now
So
we've been speaking about being a leader, understanding that there are different types of leaders, different characteristics of leaders. So and then we also spoke about job, working and being a leader in a job, right? So is there a difference between being a leader and a manager? If so, what is that difference there? All right, Naja, can you take me through that, if there is a difference at all?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. In my opinion, I'll speak from the I perspective, but I saw Amanda nodding as well.
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I think it's the questions that you have to ask yourself as a manager versus a leader are a little bit different. Now, you can be a leader who manages others towards outcomes, right? But I would say a manager is asking themselves, what is the problem? How do I solve it? How do I prioritize what to do first? How do I hold other people accountable to that? And I think that a leader is like, what is the goal? How am I uniquely positioned to solve it? Why do these obstacles exist? Why does this problem exist? Versus what is the problem, right? Leaders are able to solve the unseen problems. Managers like to be seen solving problems. Right? There's a distinction.
I love that.
Right?
I love that.
Between those two. Is there anything else that you would add to that, Amanda?
You literally hit the nail on the head with that point. And I think the kind of way I look at it too is management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right thing. The manager is there who is, again, it's not to say that management is a simple task-based job. It's not. Management is challenging. And like you said, you can be a leader that manages people to a goal, but the perspective every day, waking up, coming into that world that you're responsible for, it's not about what's happening right now. It's about what's going to happen tomorrow. And how are we going to get there? And how am I going to take these people with me? And what is their world going to look like? And how am I going to, again, bring their best selves to the table to evolve and meet the expectations and face the challenges that are happening? Not what project do I have to do today? Is everything on track to deliver that project? Are my clients getting what they need today? are my clients going to get what they need a year from now? Because if I'm not thinking about that today, then they're probably not going to be getting that a year from now, because things are constantly changing. So they're absolutely not. That's something we talk about a lot in my organization. Management and leadership are two very different things. And you can be a leader without ever managing an individual. Yep. And there have been times in my career where I have been less focused on personnel management, but I think my impact as a leader has been a much wider group of people who were looking to me for those kind of solutions, that vision to progress their career, than when I had 10 people that were directly reporting to me as a personnel manager.
So definitely after that, there's definitely a huge difference there between being a leader and a manager. That's for sure. You guys definitely gave us some amazing quotes as well. With all those quotes and with that insight, can you share your first moment you viewed someone as a leader? Who was that person? And what were some emotions that you felt? How did you gravitate towards that person? How did you feel? Who was it? Amanda, who was that person for you? And how did you feel?
It's a really good question. And I had to think a lot about this, which I think, again, comes with that like reflectiveness and growth of being able to actually put these things together in context, right? And the person that came to mind for me was actually when I was in high school. I was probably about a sophomore, and I was a part of my high school newspaper. And I was very sure I was going to be a journalist and a writer, had it all planned out. Clearly things went a little differently down the line. But there was a member of the newspaper who was about a year older than me, and she ended up being the editor-in-chief. And the way that she really focused on what everyone else was doing and how to make sure they had what they needed to learn and do their part versus her doing it for them always really stood out to me. It wasn't about the articles that she was writing or the layouts that she was responsible or the deadlines that were on her. It was how could she work with this entire team to make sure they had what they need to do their parts. And her job was really pulling it all together. And she was a brilliant writer. And she was always somebody that I really looked up to. So it really resonated with me that she spent more of her time on working with us than doing what she did so well. She could have written that whole newspaper every single month by herself, and it would have been spectacular. But that was never what it was for her. And, it's interesting. She's somebody that I've actually followed into adulthood in her career. And sure enough, she is a thought leader in her field. She is deriving new ways to think about health and leaning into her own experiences, and has followers all over the world that look to her for advice and coaching. And I don't think that is at all coincidental that at such a young age, she seemed to have such a good concept of being that. And it was motivation for me. And as I grew and found myself in more leadership roles, I realized that I found myself gravitating towards that same approach with my teams. And it was no longer about how could I be the best that I know I could be. I know I could do well doing this myself, but it was how can I have other people being the best versions of it, and how can I help them get there?
Wow, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Help shape the person you are today.
Absolutely.
Great. So Naja, I'll definitely ask you the same question. Can you share your first moment you viewed someone as a leader? Who was that person? And what were some emotions that you felt?
Yeah, the first person that I think about is Gino. And so Gino was the numbers man on my block on 140th. Rest in peace. But I was probably in elementary school, but I just watched how other people respected him. Like he brought groups of people together that have known tensions, right? And he was able to get people to be together on a common ground, which was his business, and making money together. And so he just like brought these divergent perspectives together, and he understood the importance of community. So like with the winnings that he would have, like he threw this block party every single year that like brought joy and helped people understand, like continuously build community with one another. He would like say like, you need to give me the plan for how the talent show is going to go. I would just like see him orchestrate and bring groups of children together, people who just weren't like-minded towards common goals. And I think it was the first time I saw that. When he passed away, he had basically trained another kid on the block to become the next numbers man. And he lived into his leadership going forward. So his legacy continued. And so when I think about him, oftentimes when people think of leaders, they're thinking of people who are in these positions of power, right? Or in very like white dominant spaces. And it was on my block on 140th in Harlem between 7th and 8th, next to the Big L post, like mural, right? On Lenox, like he was able to bring community together, and it was a model for what leadership could look like.
Two very, very, very different types of leaders, but both very, very impactful. One takeaway I had was you guys noticed at a young age, you were impressed at a younger age, right? That this is who I view as a leader, right? So let's take a journey later on down in life. Can an adult or someone, an older teenager, can they view someone as a leader, right? And how might that look? Will it look any kind of differently at all?
So you want to know like a different leader in this moment, or someone who is younger who is exhibiting leadership?
Okay. The takeaway I had was that both of you guys were impressed at an early age, right?
Yeah.
So at an early age. So is it always at an early age that you find this leader, or can you find that leader later on in life that you are basically kind of a huge impression on? Can that happen later on, or does it always happen early on?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on this. I think we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier. You know, I think for me, when I was kind of self-reflecting back and thinking about those times, I definitely think that more of the leadership role models have come to me later in life. And again, part of that's probably just that self-awareness, that emotional intelligence and piecing it together. But part of it is the nature of my upbringing as an only child, you know, the things that I was involved in or not so involved in. I just feel like I didn't necessarily have strong leadership role models in my life growing up. And I think that when I got into college and really started getting involved in more organizations and meeting people there and seeing people, I think going back to what we said in the beginning about people that were really focused on their values and had a good concept of who they were and why they were doing what they were doing, it really started to come through more for me. I definitely have been positively impacted by the leaders in my adult life that have really helped shape who I am. Again, going back to those last couple of years of my life being so particularly telling and defining for the person I am today as a leader and as an individual. So if you feel like you're in a space now that this isn't really resonating, or maybe you don't have that obvious answer or that connection to leadership, it's okay. And I think it's really about continuing to live that life and gain those experiences and connecting with new people and hearing new perspectives. And I think that that's really, you're going to continue to evolve and see your place in all of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Naja, right, you told us about a leader from your block on 140th, right, and characteristics that leader had, right? So who are some other people you consider a leader, and what characteristics that they have that may differ from the numbers man on your block there, right? So some names, some examples that you may have.
Yeah, I would say with Gino, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to identify that was the first leader. That I saw, right? It was through, Amanda, like you said, that reflection that I could even name that, oh, that feeling of like revering and seeing how he built community is leadership, right? And so it came with my definition of leadership to be able to find those ones from growing up. I think as I got older, after when I first came back to New York from Texas to help found a school in Brooklyn, the principal of my school, Elena, she showed me a different type of leadership. And at that moment, I had the language to see what she was doing because she helped everyone else build the tools to reflect on who they needed to be as a teacher to reach students. And so she was a systems thinker, right? There was no school. And then down to like the color on the walls to how we wanted to structure the classrooms. Like she was thinking on a systemic level, went from like meta to micro all the time, and would rationalize and tell or say the rationale for every choice that she made. Like she brought people into her thinking, and it allowed her to build a deep trust with the people within the school and build this community where everyone was working towards a common goal. And so like that investment in her staff, where it's just like, I want you to be the best you here so that whatever choice you want to make in the future, you have the toolkit to make that choice. And so I think having that clear vision of what she wanted how she wanted the school to impact the community, and going from that meta to micro, and empowering her team to be able to make choices from that same vision. She's someone that I also consider.
Definitely. Amanda, same question, right? You took us through that leader who also became an author, you know, and so who are some other people that you could have considered a leader? What other characteristics that they have that was different from that leader that you observed early on?
Yeah, I mean, the first person that comes to mind, and I'll give him a shout out, he's actually on the CSES board. His name is Jin Lee. He is a senior vice president at TransPerfect. And what really strikes me about his leadership style, and I have known him now for about 13 years, and so from when he was a younger leader to before he was running this huge business he's running, is going back to that authenticity and that being his real self part, and how that brought everything together. And most importantly in that is that you can tell every decision that he's ever made has come from a place of doing the right thing for the people and the team and the business. Regardless of what that decision was, there was that transparency, again, bringing people into that decision making. Why are we doing it? But you knew at the root, and you could trust that each decision came from a place of do the right thing and everything else will follow. You know, we're building a business, we're working on profitability, we're working on revenue, you know, this is a corporation here. But if you do the right thing by your people and by your business, then the rest of it's going to follow. And in the 10 plus years of working with him, I just saw that result time and time again. And so to be able to trust that perspective and to be able to see it tied with the result was motivating and really also validating when you think about your core values. And that's something that's very inherently me. I run from that place of wanting to do right by people and you know, joke about my moral high horse sometimes and you know, the focus on just trying to do things best by people. But he really showed that those two things can go together and that the results can really be there if you lead by example in that way. And I appreciate it. And I think that has really helped me hone in on my own definition of who I am and what kind of leader I wanted to be, and then becoming that kind of leader myself.
Great. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely amazing. So we've been speaking about leaders, right? And different responsibilities a leader may have, and different things like that. So the question that I have, and we'll definitely lead into some other questions. This will definitely lead into other questions. What is the most difficult part about being a leader, right? And what are the benefits and bright sides of being a leader as well, right? Because, you know, when you are in charge of making certain decisions, that comes with certain responsibilities, right? So what is the difficult part of being a leader?
I can start with that one. So I think one of the most difficult things, especially being a leader in a business that is not mine, right? I am lending my gifts to the company that I work for, and I am in line with the mission and vision that we have as a company. But there are times in my life or in my job when what the choices I need to make do not align with my values. And as a values-based leader, I have this thing called cognitive dissonance that comes up where there's this emotional tension that exists between like the way that like I believe what I believe and how I should, anytime you say should, but what I think I should act and how I should do that and what's actually happening in reality. And so having the self-awareness in those moments to be like, okay, there's been a breach to my value or this goes against what I believe. How do I stay authentically me in this moment when the the goal of this company right now is profit in this place. Yes, impact students, do those things, right? So it's like that tension can exist as a leader, because I want to always do the thing that's best for my people, but I also have to think about what's best for the business, right? And so sometimes there's a tension between those two things. And so it's how do I set people up to be able to adapt to with the business to change. And so I think the bright spot of that is that as a senior leader, I'm able to anticipate what some of those changes are and prepare my people for change, right? Help them upskill themselves to be ready to step in the new position or the new place. But there are times when you have to do like a restructure, right, of a team. And that impacts the people that I care deeply about, and that I invest so much time growing as leaders. But like, I would say that's the difficult part, but there's a bright spot because like you can plan for it. You can plan for that change, plan for that scale as well.
Definitely, I could not agree more. Amanda, could you take us, what are some difficulties about being a leader? What I hear from Naja was adaptability was a common theme that I heard from Naja, right? So what are also some difficulties along with adaptability that's difficult with being a leader?
Well, I have to say first and foremost that was literally the perfect answer. And I think, Naja, our styles are so aligned. That would have been my answer, probably not as eloquent. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different turn to touch on something else, but I fully agree with all of that. You know, I think two things that come to mind, and they resonate, I know, with the essential skills that CSES really focuses on, are agility and perseverance. And agility in particular, because I think there is no word I have used more in the context of leadership and with my leaders and looking at, you know, how we're going to plan out our year, how we are looking at our vision, than agility. You know, life throws things at you left, right, and center. And I totally agree with Naja that you get to a point where you can anticipate and manage expectation and be transparent as you continue to grow as a leader. But there are always things that come up that you maybe weren't able to do that with. So persevering through those moments, especially when you are the person that ultimately is being looked at towards that vision. How are we going to get through this? You know, here's this challenge. How do we get on the other side? Not even just what actions do I need to take now, but this is a hard time, and looking to someone to show them that it's going to get better. And that they're going to not only follow you and stick with you through that, but continue to be their best selves and continue to be dedicated and passionate because they see that vision and they have the agility to change directions when maybe they were really excited or focused on something that now we have to look a different way to kind of persevere. And I think that can be, it's a lot of weight that you can carry, you know, and because you want to be that person for people and you carry that weight through because you want to make sure that they get to the other side. And I think the best part of it is that other side. You know, I think there are times I've been extremely emotional when I see the incredible success of people that have gone through some of these challenges and they stuck with it and they've look to people like myself as a leader, but they've really brought their best selves to the table, and they are the reason that we made it through and that we redeveloped the vision and that we tackled all these challenges. So to see these people be their best selves and get their promotions and grow their confidence and become leaders themselves, hands down the best part of the role.
So definitely, I couldn't agree more, right? So adaptability, being that consistent figure as well, those are all difficulties, but also being able to group and bring everybody to a common theme is the bright side of definitely being that leader, right? So we don't have too much time left, right? So basically, I would just like you guys to just share with us some closing remarks. What do you think a young person should know about what it takes to being a leader? What advice would you give? Anything for a young person, again, from that high school perspective, college, and that entry-level position? Those are all the same people looking and developing. And so what is the advice that you would give to that specific group of individuals right there?
I can jump in. I would say two things come to mind. the first thing I would say is continue to give yourself the opportunity to learn and grow through self-reflection and just meeting new people and learning new things and diversifying, who you are and what you're good at by seeing how other people think and getting those different perspectives. I think that getting outside of your own bubble and being able to grow from that, having those different perspectives is such an integral part of how to be the leader that you want to be, and be able to lead different people and bring all of them together. And I think that kind of, again, that perseverance and that agility, and I think, Nadia, if you said this at the beginning, fail harder. You're going to hear this a lot of times in your life, but if you are looking to take a path to leadership and grow and learn about yourself, you have to fail. And you have to fail time and time again. And you need to be able to learn from that failure and take that and apply it to the person that you are and the person that you want to be. Do not be afraid of failure. See that as a part of your path toward being a leader, and how you can use those opportunities to build up this credibility, this respect, the values that motivate you through that experience. Because if you don't, you're probably doing something wrong if you're not failing pretty regularly.
Oh man, thank you for that. Definitely, I agree with that. Failure is definitely, they say failure is not an option, but failure is basically the first steps to success, right? So that definitely is something I agree with so much. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. Naja, what's some definitely advice that you would give to that select group of individuals who are just looking to, turn themselves around and be that leader that can impact change in their respective fields?
Yeah. What I would say is that there are 3 levels of leadership. It's knowing yourself in relation to others, and understanding systems. And within those 3 levels, there's like a couple of domains, right? You have to build some relationships, relationship with self. I'm gonna come back to this one, because committing to your own self-growth is step 1. Having a clear vision, what is your strategic action, and being open to learning continuously. The more you learn, the more you know that you don't know a lot, right? But I think that at this specific stage, when you're trying to identify who you are as a leader, it's important to commit to continuous self-improvement. And it takes reflecting on what are your values. I think understanding those strengths, areas of growth, and like how you're able to impact others in different contexts. I think it's like fostering resilience, like understanding what motivates you and like what helps you sustain momentum. Because a part of being a leader is sometimes doing things you don't like doing, right? Discipline, and keeping to go at it in those ways. And so like, how do I regularly reflect on, are my actions in alignment with those values and the decisions and the actions and the impact that I want to make? And then how do I reconsider, right? Or like readjust and realign? You are also allowed to change your mind, right? You're not going to be this, like, I am not the same person I was as a leader even a year ago. Are my core values the same? Yes. But the way that those manifest in the day-to-day, they're becoming more refined, right? And so I think I would say at this stage in your leadership journey, understanding what is that foundation that is going to ground you, stay consistent, so that you can be your authentic self in every single space that you enter.
Absolutely amazing. Oh my goodness. Amanda and Naja, thank you so much for your time. I am more than positive that our viewers have taken a lot of insight from what you guys have had to say. So again, thank you so much. Of course, we had a few questions that I actually definitely wanted to tackle and hint at a little bit more though, but unfortunately that is our time. And again, thank you. So maybe next time we could possibly, invite you guys back out to another panel discussion. But again, I couldn't be more appreciative. And again, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you
so much for having us.
Thank you.